Hello, hello. Welcome. I'm going to try and speak up because you can hear my voice and I am a bit raspy. I didn't anticipate on sounding like Barry White today, but please forgive me. I am getting over a cold. But I felt like it was important to kind of stay the course and to hop on. I want to talk to you today about what contractions feel like. And actually, before I get into this particular episode, I just want to remind you that I do have a free PDF that you can download by going to birthprepacademy.com/hospital bag. And you will be able to download your copy of Pack Your Hospital Bag in 60 Minutes. So definitely check that out. I always like to remind everybody before we hop into the episode so that you know that that is there and available for you. All right, without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into what does contractions feel like. Now, I felt like this was really important to talk about because I remember being pregnant. I remember the term contractions being thrown around. I remember understanding that it's what happens when you go into labor, but I don't really know if I understood what they would feel like before actually feeling them. As a matter of fact, I know I didn't really grasp the idea of what contractions felt like because I remember having them and wondering, like, oh my gosh, is this a contraction? So I feel like it is helpful to really talk about, what is a contraction? What do they feel like? And that way, as you start to experience them, as you progress through your pregnancy and once you get into labor, you'll have a point of reference to start gauging whether or not what you're experiencing is, in fact, a contraction. So, in today's lesson or video or episode, I want to talk about a few things to really kind of put the whole picture together. So, I'm going to talk about like what is a contraction? What does it feel like? And what does it feel like throughout the different stages of labor? I feel like that's important too because it kind of changes as the labor progresses. I'll also throw in a few tips about things that you can do to actually try to manage some of that pain during labor. So, just to be clear, we're going to be talking about specifically contractions and not labor in full. I can do another episode, to bring in more aspects of labor. But for the purpose of this conversation, I want to talk specifically about contractions. So, what are contractions? Contractions is the process of your uterus, which is where your baby is when they're in utero, right? They're inside of the uterus. And a contraction is your body uh, intensifying or tightening and relaxing. That is a contraction. Your uterus is tightening and then releasing, right? And so that process is called a contraction. Now, you might be wondering, well, what does a contraction feel like? It, simply put, is a menstrual cramp that, depending on what your regular cycle feels like whenever you have cramps, if you have them, some people have them very mildly, others, have them very intense. Contractions they feel like menstrual cramps when they're initially coming on, but then they do intensify. And so it starts to progress where you're feeling it and you're like, okay, this is more than what I normally feel on a monthly basis. So to be very clear, if you can imagine what it feels like when you're cramping during that time of the month, then that is is what essentially a very basic contraction will feel like for you. Now, during this process, it's important to understand, well, what's going on during this process of having contractions. Your contractions, as they grow and intensify throughout the duration of your labor, they're going to contract and then they're going to release. But with every contraction and with every tightening, it's going to have more and more tightening around it, which will then push the baby down um, deeper and deeper into the birth canal so that you can assist with your pushing that will help to get the baby out, right? That will result in the delivery of your baby. And so during the contraction, your cervix is thinning out, which is called effacement, and your cervix is starting to open essentially, right? And so with every stage of labor, as your contractions intensify, more and more of that is happening. More of your cervix is starting to thin out, and more of it is beginning to open, which is what we call dilation, right? When you become dilated. So, there are three different phases of labor. And so let's talk about what happens with contractions in the first stage of labor, which is considered to be the early stage of labor, right? Um, in this particular stage, this is where you go from 0 to 3 centimeters in dilation. So typically during this time, when your contractions start, you are starting to dilate anywhere from 0 to 3 centimeters. And during this time is when it really is likened to the menstrual cramp, right? So you can feel it. It's, a lot of discomfort, low back pain, maybe a little bit of pressure in the pelvic area, but they are not overly uh, strong at this point. And when the duration of them ends, you have a pretty good break in between them, right? And so that is early labor. This is what the contractions feel like. Now, I want to pause and put a pin here, a note to say that what I'm describing and the contractions that I'm describing in this conversation is mostly what is to be expected in a spontaneous labor, meaning that you went into labor on your own. Um, Now, the difference between spontaneous and induced labor is that when medications are used to induce the labor, right? Um, and sometimes this is done for various reasons. Whatever the case, if you're being induced, a lot of times um, those contractions start very intense, intensely. So in spontaneous labor, you get more of a progression, more of it starts here and then it goes 0 and then it goes up to 10, versus an induced labor when, you start the medication, it could, it's likely to be turned up a notch. And so your contractions have to be they're usually a bit more intense for you. So just consider that as I am explaining this, that again, I'm speaking of spontaneous labor, meaning that you've started to labor on your own. So we've covered the early stage, 0 to 3 centimeters, menstrual cramps, maybe a little bit more intense, but not very much. And you are getting a significant break in between those episodes, right? The second type of labor is what we call active labor. And this is where you are dilated from 3 to 7 centimeters in dilation. And so, this part of labor, the contractions definitely ramp up a bit in intensity. You are feeling them last a bit longer. They're and so they're starting to it's almost like a wave, so to speak. So the wave starts here and then it comes up and then it comes back down and it releases before the next wave washes in. And that is the pattern of a contraction. So you'll get it where they're coming every 3 to 5 minutes now. It's very, timed. You can almost time it out because they're coming very patterned every 3 to 5 minutes, so to speak. And when they come, they have more of a duration and a little bit more intensity. You are starting to feel more of that pressure, more of that back pain, um but you are getting those breaks in between as well. And so you really want to cherish the time where you're not contracting and really just relax, breathe, and keep your body very focused on your labor and its progression. So again, this is through active labor, anywhere from 3 to 7 centimeters. Now, the very last stage of labor that I want to cover is transition. And this is when the contractions are the most intense, right? This is the most intense labor and discomfort that you are going to feel while giving birth. But the good news is it's also the shortest phase of labor, right? So when it gets to this point of like, I don't know if I can do this anymore, the good thing to know is that that means that the baby is literally right around the corner. Your birth is likely going to be, I mean, very soon, very soon. And so this transition phase is 7 centimeters to 10 centimeters. So you want to keep that in mind that this is the last leg of the race, so to speak. During this, the contractions are, again, the most intense that they're going to be during your delivery. Um, and the thing that has changed from the other phases to now is that they are starting to come back to back. It's going to be less of a break in between. Now, during this time, I want to say this because I think this is so important. Um, this is this is what you've been prepping for. This is what you've been anticipating. You are, I'm sure, excited to meet your sweet baby. And so we almost have you there. And it's so important to, at this point, at this stage in the game, to really focus on pushing, to really focus on getting through just one contraction at a time, not to try and look to the right or to the left, but just stay focused on the goal. My other instruction for you is that during this time, once you start to move into the phase where they're coming back to back to back, um, I really try to help clients understand that it's important to really focus. And by focusing, I mean um, not a lot of verbal back and forth during this time, because it's hard to focus and like give instructions or talk or whatnot. Um, you really want to try and keep communication down to a minimum because you really should be using this time to zone in, to zone in. It will take every ounce of you to get um, through this last part of the race, to cross that finish line. And so you really want to focus on that, and it's hard to focus with a lot of distractions and things like that. So I really try to tell, my parents to, try and keep it to a minimum, stay really, really focused, and really look at just that one contraction, just getting through that one contraction, taking a brief break, and then going right back in with the next one. Um, at this point, you are going to hear instructions from your healthcare provider, whether it's a midwife, a doctor, a nurse practitioner. And so they will be helping to guide you, um, through, what they need you to do to go ahead and get the baby out. But even more than that, it's also important to stay focused on, your breathing, and to zone in, because your body will instinctually guide you with when to push, how to bear down, and things of that sort. But you got to be focused. You got to zone in to really be able um to move, and kind of, you know, go with the flow of what your body is naturally built to do. And it will really take over and kind of get you to where you need to be. It's a miracle, in my opinion, of how it all works, just instinctually, without a lot of, intervention being made. Your body will naturally just do what it is built to do, at least in most cases, right? So, before we wrap up, I also want to just talk about maybe some things that you can do to manage some of the discomfort. Again, we talked about it being a process, especially for spontaneous labor. So the contractions start out at one, and then they, escalate all the way up to 10. Well, how can you manage some of that discomfort? Ways to manage the discomfort is, number one, labor positions. You want to be able to labor in a few different positions that will help to uh, progress the labor, as well as offer a little bit of ease. Um, you definitely want to choose positions that work with the principle of gravity. um, Gravity is just there, right? It just exists. And so you want to um, get into different labor positions that will work with the gravity to really bring the baby down into the birth canal, so that you continue to progress, and hopefully your duration of labor will be minimized because of you being able to optimize those labor positions, right? And so um, not only will it help to be in a more comfortable position if you can find a labor position that's a little bit more comfortable for you, but it may also help to progress the labor. So keep that in mind. Number two, something that you can do is breathing and breathing techniques. Now, I can go into more detail of all of this information in other videos, but I just want to touch on it so that you can be aware that these are things that you can do to help manage some of your discomfort during the transaction, or during the contractions. I'm sorry. And so, um, another thing you can do is breathing techniques. There are different techniques that you can use with each phase of labor. And so you definitely want to use breathing techniques to help with some of that discomfort. The third thing that you can do is massages. And so your support person um, should be able to hopefully offer some support by giving gentle back massages, especially in that lower back area, because that is definitely an area where you will feel some of the discomfort and pressure of the baby moving down into the birth canal. So you can also do prenatal massages that will help as you labor with the contractions. Now, the final tip that I have for helping to deal with some of that discomfort is relaxation. During this time, I recommend maybe bringing the lights down low. If there is a TV on in your room, I recommend bringing the volume down, because it's often easier to focus, to zone in, to really breathe, and to rock with your labor positions, to really have that low groan as you are digging in to focus if there's not a lot of stimulus around. um, at least most of the time. If you happen to be one of those people where stimulus is your thing, go on with your bad self. But for most people, it's hard to relax, um, and allow your body that break in between contractions when there's a lot of stimulus. So again, keeping the lights low, keeping the TV low, maybe some relaxing sounds with a sound machine or a playlist that you've curated for yourself while you're in labor. You can also try, again, very minimal talking, so that it's a nice, quiet, soothing atmosphere as you progress in your labor and start to ramp up, to push and then ultimately deliver your sweet baby. So I hope this is helpful. Again, we went over the what a contraction is, what it feels like, and what you can expect during the spontaneous labor. We also talked about the difference between the spontaneous labor and the induced labor, and the difference, that there's a natural progression with spontaneous. It's more of a intense start with an induced labor, which should be considered when you're thinking about contractions, but that they can have the edge taken off. Now, let me just say this very quickly. You know, none of these things is going to completely take away the pain of a contraction. Um, that it, there's a purpose. Like you're delivering a baby, so there's a baby coming, and you don't want to impede that process whatsoever. But if there's things you can do to kind of take the edge off and to provide a little bit of comfort, especially in between those contractions, then this is absolutely an excellent list to pull from for things that you can use during that process. I hope you have found this to be helpful, because again, I certainly wish someone had shared these things with me in detail when I was pregnant. It would have been very helpful to me. So I hope it is of value to you. Do not forget that there is a PDF that is free and waiting for you to help you pack your hospital bag in 60 minutes. That can be found at birthprepacademy.com/hospital bag. Also, I have two words for you: Black Friday. If you want in to have exclusive access to the sale that I will be offering, then you need to be on my list. That is going to give you first dibs and the deepest discount. So definitely go to birthprepacademy.com, and you will see the link there to sign up for the Black Friday waitlist. Y'all, I don't even know, because it's so fire. Like, I don't even know if I'll ever do this again. I'm feeling a little shaky about it now, but I did it. I'm gonna commit to it this time. So get in on it while you can. Definitely hit up the wait list. Y'all, I enjoy being with you. Until next time, happy birthday, mama.